Good morning. Good morning. My name is Judy Rd, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees at East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church in Kirtland, Ohio. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. Whether you are a member or a friend of our congregation, whether you join us every Sunday or only occasionally, whether we've known you for decades or you're meeting us for the first time today, whether you are with us here under the beacon or joining us from your own sacred space at home, you are welcome here. Acknowledging your skin color, ancestry, and expression of gender, your net worth, your political opinions, or who you love. Whatever the long and winding journey that has brought you here this morning, you are welcome. May this be a time of reflection and renewal, a time to live into our mission, to love, revere, discover, and connect.
Good morning. I'm Mary Bender. I'm a member of the Worship Arts Committee, and that committee has been providing some services when we are without a minister. The call to worship this morning comes from the words of Reverend Gretchen Holy, entitled, "Here We Remember Ourselves." Give up the fight for some other moment, some other life than here and now. Give up the longing for some other world, the wishing for other choices to make, other songs to sing, other bodies, other ages, other countries, other stakes. Purge the past, forgive the future, for each come too soon. Surrender only to this life, this day, this hour. Not because it does not constantly break your heart, but because it also beckons with beauty, startles with delight, if only we keep waking up. This is the gift we've been given, these body clothes, this heartbreak, this pulse, this breath, this light, these friends, this hope. Here we remember ourselves, all a part of it all, giving thanks and centering joy. Come, let us worship together. Please follow along in your hymnal if you would like to, as to hymn number 221, Light One Candle. This is in honor of Hanukkah, and the choir will sing it. You can follow along, and hopefully we will not wish for another song. This one's a tricky one.
Light one We light our chalice this morning with the words of Reverend Scott Taylor. We light this chalice in honor of the history that holds and heals us. For the stories of heroism that inspire our own. For the faces of loved ones who have passed and whose images we see our better selves. For reminders of those who paved the path on which we traveled and blessed us with advantages we didn't earn all on our own. These memories do not live in the past. They carve the contours of our present. They throw themselves into our futures and lure us into building a better life for all. They are here today. Look, listen, let them in. May their light guide our way. We gather in the chill of winter solstice, finding warmth from each other, nourishing hope where reason fails. Holy One of blessing, your presence fills creation. Holy One of blessing, your presence fills creation. Holy One of blessing, your presence fills creation. So this is the part of the service where we hold our history. The history of the past week, month, or however long we may be holding on to something. The milestones of our lives that bring us joy, and the difficulties of our lives that we ask each other to help share the burden of. And sometimes we put some of those things in this book that makes its home on a pedestal in the narthex. And anyone at any time can write something in there for that to be read here during this part of the service so that we may all hold those joys and concerns together. Today, Ricky Beck's son Ben and daughter-in-law Kelly are expecting a baby girl in late May. That's very exciting. As is Robin McBride celebrated his 21st birthday aboard a submarine this year. So with those two joys shared aloud, and all of the joys and cares kept silent in our hearts, I invite you now, as we hold on to these histories, to hold on to a stone. Perhaps you brought one in with you this morning. Perhaps you grabbed one from the bowl at the top of the aisle. Perhaps you'd like to grab one right now. But if you have one, I'd invite you to hold that stone in the palm of your hand. And as we hold on to these histories, allow that stone to carry the weight so that you may truly experience the healing in your history. We'll have a moment of silence, and when the singing bowl sounds, I invite you to take these stones and join me in placing them in the bowl at the center of our worship space beneath our beacon. spiritual guide for navigating adulthood. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same emotion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living.
Before I begin my homily this morning, I'd like to read a story that I received from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Delaware County. It's written by Reverend Peter Friedrichs, and it's called Photographs and Memories. There was an ash tree growing in the front yard of the house I grew up in. It had wide, spreading branches that were arranged almost like a staircase, which made for easy climbing. I remember the feel of that bark against the inside of my bare arms and legs as I would reach up and grab the lowest branch and wrap my legs around it to pull myself up. From there, I could scamper into the safety of the air high above the ground, hidden from everyone and everything by the broad leaves. To this day, I can identify an ash tree by the distinctive diamond-shaped pattern of the bark, which became so familiar to me over the years that I spent up in that tree. I have a photo, which is a picture of me in that tree, along with my siblings. You'll see me at the top, then my younger sister Ann, my older sister Nancy, and at the bottom, my brother Jeff. We came to call this the family tree because for several years in a row, my father would have us climb the tree and he would take a picture to show how much we had grown and changed over the course of that year. This picture says a few things about me. First, and most obviously, it shows that I'm part of a family. Of course, that sparks all kinds of memories by itself. This picture also reminds me of how much I loved climbing trees as a kid. Not just this tree in my front yard, but just about any tree I could find. I loved to climb as high as I could and then sit on a branch so that I could feel the tree sway with the wind. This picture stimulates some happy memories, but looking at it more closely, it says something about who I am and who I grew up to be. As I said, in the picture, I'm on the highest branch, then my younger sister, then my older sister, and then my brother. Had we been arranged in our birth order, I would have been on the second highest branch, not at the top. But in this picture and in every recreation of it over the years, I was always on top. I don't think this was intentional. I was the one who loved to climb the highest, so it made sense. But I think it's symbolic that I'm up there. I like to be on top of things, on top of the game, on top of what's going on, you might say in control. The rearranged birth order has significance for me as well. Although I was second born in the family, I was the first son. So in many ways, I felt like the firstborn. And in the patriarchal society I grew up in during the 60s, I always felt a lot of pressure around that. I felt that much was expected of me, that I had to live up to my parents, and particularly my father's, hopes for me. I had to be the best at everything. It's probably why I'm a bit of a perfectionist and a know-it-all today. And maybe a little bit why I can be hard to live with. I'm not saying that this one photograph created this self-image that I've carried around my entire life, but I can see how it is a visual representation of it. Photographs are tools of memory, aren't they? They help us call to mind the stories around them. Remember that trip we took to the Grand Canyon, we say, looking at the picture of Aunt Kay peering over the rim? And remember that birthday party when you were 6, we say, looking at the picture of neatly dressed boys and girls around a table, all eyeing the cake. And we were going to cancel it because you had chickenpox. The stories grow out of the pictures and help create the image of who we are today. When we take out a box of old pictures or old photo albums, or today maybe a book from Shutterfly or a Google Photos file, we are piecing together our past and piecing together a wider picture of ourselves. Through the pictures we see and the stories we tell, we are remembering ourselves, our families, each other, putting the pieces back together. Now we have to admit that the pictures and the stories they prompt us to tell don't give us the full picture of who we are or who we are becoming. We know that our photos only tell, at best, half the story. because at least in my experience, we only tend to take photos of the good times. The celebrations, the victories, the milestones, the silly times, the fun times. I don't know anyone who snaps a photo of the bad times so they can go back someday in the future and remember or relive them. And the truth is that trauma and traumatic experiences don't need photographs because they are burned into our brains in ways that are very different from the vacations and the birthday parties. Our image of ourselves is much more complex than can ever be captured in a photo album. We need to keep in mind that there is more to our story, much more, than what the photos reveal. Photographs can be tricky and even dangerous too, because the stories that grow out of them may not be of our own making. We can become trapped by them. Take, for example, the home movie my father took of my sister trying to back up our garden tractor with a trailer attached to it. Everyone knows that backing up a trailer is tricky, and as a 12-year-old, Nancy had to learn that the hard way, and it's preserved on film for all of us to witness. To the rest of the family, it's a hilarious silent movie of her repeated attempts and repeated failures until she literally throws her hands up in the air and stomps off in a fit of frustration. But to my sister, these images capture an embarrassing incident. I'm guessing that it undermined her self-confidence and echoed in her psyche for years, maybe even to this day. If we're not careful, we can be defined by the images captured on video or in photos, and the stories we and others tell about them. So we need to be vigilant about how much power we place in the photographs and the stories, perhaps the epic family myths that have grown up around them. We need to be able to embrace those that help us and let go of or even destroy the ones that don't. On balance, does your photograph encourage you toward your better nature? Does the story it tells, the story you've told, the stories others have told, move you toward fulfillment, satisfaction, completeness? Are they stories of building up or breaking down? Have you been laughing with others in shared good humor? Or have you stoically allowed others to laugh at you while for years you've been crying on the inside? We like to think that our memories are of our own making, but is that ever really so? When I'm outside by myself on a cloudless, moonless night, and I see a shooting star, I'll be the only one who remembers the awe that I felt in that moment. But even then, where does that sense of awe come from? It must have been instilled in me somewhere, by someone or something. Who taught me to look up, and why was it important to them? I could tell you the story of how our family sat with rapt attention to the television set as the astronauts of Apollo 8 orbited the moon in the Christmas of 1968, or how years before that, my parents gave me a cardboard mock-up of a Gemini spaceship that I spent hours inside pretending I was orbiting the Earth. The things we see, the things we notice, the things we experience are colored and shaped by layer upon layer of memory. Memories that stretch back not just to our childhoods, but to those of our parents and grandparents. They are, in a very real sense, embedded in our DNA. Like photographs handed down through the ages with the stories that accompany them. Memories aren't made in a vacuum, and very few, if any, are cut out of whole cloth. The stories we tell are links in a long chain that stretches back beyond our own lifetime, and they carry forward beyond them as well. As our pictures prompt us to name and claim our histories, our own memories, we would do well to remember. We have been handed a tapestry created by others. What we do with the threads, how we add to the design, is up to us. And then we hand it off to those who follow us. Let us be caretakers of myth and memory, while we are also weavers of our life's design. That was Reverend Peter Friedrich's sermon. Now, my homily is entitled Healing with Our History. These past few months, the Worship Arts Committee has been using worship research resources from the Unitarian Universalist Association. Each month has a theme, so the sermon topics and the readings that are suggested in the materials relate to the theme for the month. The theme for November is Holding History, so each Sunday this month has focused on a different aspect of that theme. The topic for this Sunday is Healing with Our History. I had to think about that for a while. Fortunately, Judy Willour was working with me on this service, and we were able to have one meeting to share ideas before she landed in the hospital with a broken hip. So thanks to Judy for her contribution, and thanks to Jared for helping out with the service as well. Healing with our history, an interesting idea. How does that work? We can study our church history. We can talk to church members who have been around for a while to learn some history, but how does that heal? That is particularly puzzling when we consider that memory is subjective. If you were a board member during a time of church turmoil, and yes, there have been times of church turmoil, you may recall events very differently from a church member who attended casually to hear a sermon on Sunday morning. I've been a member here since 1975, and I attended for a couple of years before I actually joined. I was on the board during a very trying time with a minister who was simply not a good fit. That minister was divisive and stirred up a lot of trouble, some of which was not perceived by everyone. The congregation became very polarized. Some people thought that the board and certain committees were being unfair to this minister, and there was another group that believed that the minister was really out of line and the board should be doing something more about it. Eventually, this resulted in a group of longtime members leaving the church. For several years, there were bitter feelings after that minister left. It took a long time to reestablish trust, recover financially, and move ahead. As many of you know, we are a congregational church. This means we are self-governing. We hire and fire ministers and staff. We compose our own bylaws and policies, and we regulate our own finances. The members have the ultimate authority, which is exercised through the board of trustees and committees. Major decisions are voted on at the annual meeting each year. We are not under the control of the Unitarian Universalist Association or any other hierarchy. We have no bishops, no pope. Therefore, the ministers do not run the church. The authority of each minister is determined by the contract, or letter of agreement as they prefer to call it. Some ministers are more comfortable with this than others. It is important for board members to understand this distinction, especially if they were previously members of a non-congregational church, where the minister pretty much did run the church. So this brings me back to our history. Since I've been a member here, there have been at least 10 ministers. Some were interim ministers who served for a year or two while we searched for a permanent minister. Those interims provided a time of healing for those who were disappointed in the departure of a minister, and some were quite helpful with that transition. Some of the permanent ministers were quite good at building good feelings within the congregation. Some were good at pastoral care. Some were better at sermons or organizational tasks. The one common feature I can conclude from my history here is that ministers come and ministers go. They are human, of course, and sometimes a good fit now may not be a good fit later as the congregation and its needs change. One summer when I was at Summer Institute, which is our district retreat, one of the speakers was commenting on the fact that ministers come and go, and sometimes churches experience turmoil. I can't recall that minister's name, but something she said stuck with me. She said, no matter what, just keep attending. Don't give up on your church family. Maybe our church is like the weather. Some days are sunny, some are not, and some can be downright stormy, but stick around. A change is going to come. I hope our history can be a bridge to an inspiring future. Amen. And now let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. Those are the words of Brenda Lovely. So let there be an offering.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to thank you for your generosity today. Not just with your monetary gifts, but also for your presence this morning, both here in our building and those joining us online. We are grateful for the dedication, time, and effort you give our community. It is your commitment that allows all of us together to further our mission, to love, revere, discover, and connect. Reverend Scott Taylor, remembering that we do not walk alone. May we remember that we never walk out into the world alone. We stand on the shoulders of brave and generous ones who have gone before. We walk beside companions ready to catch us when we fall.
We hold memories of dear ones in our hearts who keep us connected to our center. May we make this our most important work, to remember that who we are does not end at the edges of our own skin. We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together. It is written in the Torah, I call heaven and earth to witness today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. That's from Deuteronomy